Mixing Your Own Marshmallows by Nicole Pilatus and Allison Thompson. The purpose of this experiment is to find the ratio of sugar to corn syrup that produces the best tasting and best textured marshmallow.
Our background information is that marshmallows came from a tall marshmallow plant called Athea officinalis that grows in swampy fields and has soft and springy roots. It is used to make candy and medicine. Its main ingredients in marshmallows are sugar, corn syrup, and gelatin. The greater the concentration of sugar in a solution is, the higher its boiling point is. Corn syrup is added to marshmallows because it's used to help prevent crystals from forming. Nobody likes crunchy marshmallows. Gelatin is important because when the air and the bubbles in the syrup protein mix together, the gelatin stabilizes the bubble walls so that they don't collapse. When marshmallows are heated, they become full of air and the air expands and it is porous, so eventually the air escapes so the marshmallow melts. It gets its gooey consistency because the sugar has a very low melting point. Marshmallows have a melting point that is just above body temperature so that they start to change from a solid to a liquid state as soon as they reach the warmth of your mouth or the heat of the fire. Our hypothesis is if I add 2/3 cup of sugar and 1/4 cup of corn syrup, then recipe 2 will produce the best tasting and best textured marshmallows.
The materials we will need for this project is square or round foil cake pans 8 or 9 inches wide, tape, pen or permanent marker, vegetable oil, paper towels, powdered or confectioner's sugar, strainer, measuring cups, water, large mixing bowl, 1/4 ounce envelopes of plain unflavored gelatin, a fork, small saucepan with lid, corn syrup, granulated sugar, candy thermometer, electric mixer or beater, timer, measuring spoons, pure vanilla extract, spatula, pizza wheel, ruler, large airtight containers or gallon-sized sealable plastic bags, knife, cutting board, 20 pennies, volunteers to do taste testing, and a lab notebook.
To begin our experiment, first we need to wash our hands, then get out all cooking tools and ingredients and set them out so that they are all ready to go and easy to access. Then we need to identify the 240 Fahrenheit mark on your candy thermometer. This is traditional temperature used to make marshmallows. Then we need to prepare your cake pans. First, we need to label the bottoms of 3 cake pans with masking tape pieces numbered from 1 to 3. Pan 1 will contain recipe 1, pan 2 will contain recipe 2, and pan 3 will contain recipe 3. Each recipe contains a different ratio of sugar to corn syrup. Then we need to pour a small amount of vegetable oil on a paper towel and lightly oil the 3 cake pans. Then we need to pour a small amount of powdered sugar in the strainer and dust the insides of the cake pans.
The next step in our experiment is to prepare our gelatin. First, pour 1/6 cup of cold water into a large mixing bowl. The second step is to sprinkle 1/4 ounce envelope of plain unflavored gelatin over the cold water. And the last step is to mix the gelatin and water together for about 5 seconds with a fork and set the bowl aside. This will give the gelatin time to soften or bloom.
The next step in our experiment is to prepare our syrup. First, add 1/4 cup of cold water to the saucepan. Then, using table 1 as a guide, add granulated sugar and corn syrup to the water in the saucepan, according to which recipe you are currently making. Then, put the lid on the saucepan. Then, turn the stove to medium-high heat. Then, lift the lid and check the solution in the saucepan about every 30 seconds until it comes to just a boil. Then, remove the lid and set it aside. Then begin to measure the temperature of the syrup in the saucepan using the candy thermometer. Then continue heating your syrup solution until the temperature reaches 240 Fahrenheit. When the temperature reaches 240 Fahrenheit, immediately turn off the stove and move it to the next section, making your marshmallows.
The next step in this procedure is making your marshmallows. The first step is to turn the mixer on low and carefully pour the hot syrup solution into the gelatin and water in the large mixing bowl. The second step is to set the timer for 11 minutes and start it. The third step is gradually increase the speed of the mixer until it is operating at full high speed. Next, continue to beat for approximately 11 minutes or until the mixture starts to become very thick, glossy, and lukewarm. 5. Add 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla and beat for another minute. 6. Pour a thin layer of vegetable oil on a spatula and scoop out the marshmallow mixture from the mixing bowl and into the prepared cake pan with the masking tape piece that matches the recipe number. 7. Use the spatula to gently smooth down the top of the marshmallow so that it is pretty flat. 8. Wash and dry all cooking utensils. 9. Repeat the sections. And 10. Allow the free marshmallow pies to sit out uncovered on a counter for at least 4 hours so that they can become firm.
The next step in our procedure is preparing our marshmallows for testing. Once the marshmallow pies have become firm after at least 4 hours, turn the pans over one at a time onto a cutting board. Roll a pizza cutter in some powdered sugar and then use it to cut up your marshmallow into pieces that are about 3 centimeters by 3 centimeters. Dust the marshmallows on all sides with a little powdered sugar using the strainer. Then place the marshmallows in a plastic bag, being sure to label the bag with the recipe and trial number from the masking tape pieces so that you know which recipe was being used for each bag. The marshmallows will keep in the bag for up to 3 days.
Our first test is the melting test. The first step is to drop 3 marshmallow pieces, one from each recipe, in a pan of hot water and see which piece melts first. And then the second step is to start a timer and see which one melts first. Second and last, record your results in a data table in your lab notebook.
The next test is the cutting test. First, you need to put a marshmallow piece from one of the recipes on a cutting board. Then you need to arrange a small cookie cutter so that it can sit on top of the marshmallows. Then on top of the cookie cutter, balance the small disposable cup. Then put 20 pennies in the cup one at a time. Then remove the cup and cookie cutter from the marshmallow piece and inspect the marshmallow. Did the cookie cutter leave a noticeable impression? Then repeat this process with the marshmallow pieces from all the other recipes.
Our next test is the taste test. The first step is to gather your family and friends and give them 3 samples of marshmallows, one from each recipe and a trial set. Have them evaluate the samples for taste and texture. The second step is to find out which recipe do they think made the best tasting samples. Which recipe do they think made the best textured samples? Record your results in a data table in your lab notebook.
In conclusion, our results supported our hypothesis. Trial 2 was the best tasting and best textured marshmallow. Our results showed that Trial 3 took the least amount of time to melt because it had the most sugar and the least amount of corn syrup. Our results also showed that Trial 1 was the toughest marshmallow. A possible error we might have made was waiting too long before we poured the syrup into the bowl on Trial 1 because the syrup solidified in the saucepan. We learned from this experiment that when you're making marshmallows, you shouldn't use too much sugar or too much corn syrup. You have to use the perfect amount. If you use too much of any of these, they won't taste right or they won't have the right texture.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project.